Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett's Take. First off, congrats on the Thunder for winning the championship. It was unfortunate that Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles in the first quarter there in Game 7. Otherwise, we don't know how that would have gone. But nevertheless, the Thunder took advantage, and congrats to them. So now that, which by the way, I predicted the Thunder would win the finals. Now I did in 6 games, not 7, but close enough. So now it's finally time, though, with the NBA draft upon us tomorrow, to go over my NBA mock draft predictions. So let's get started with the number 1 overall pick with the Dallas Mavericks. Obviously, that will go to Cooper Flag. No need to say anything else about that, except to go Mavs. And then San Antonio has the second overall pick, and that's going to go to Dylan Harper, the shooting guard from Rutgers. And then for Philadelphia 76ers with the third overall pick, this is where the draft kind of starts to begin. Philadelphia, I know, wouldn't mind trading out of this pick to accumulate more picks. But for my mock drafts, I do not project trades at all. So we just got to go with what is. So since Philadelphia would stay in the spot, the player that I heard they love the most, of course, it could be fool's gold. You never know until the players that get drafted. But from what I heard, they really love VJ Edgecombe, the shooting guard from Baylor. So I had them taking him with the third overall pick. Number 4 is Charlotte. I feel that they're going to go with a wing player here. And there's 2 different wing players at the spot. You got either Trey Johnson from Texas or you got Con Knuppel, the wing from Duke. Either they can go with either spot, either player, and it wouldn't be a bad pick. But I feel like they're going to go with Trey Johnson here because he has more of an offensive upside. And when I mean offensive upside, I mean as far as he's a scorer where he can go off for 30 in a game, something like that. Now for Utah at number 5, go Jazz as well. They have 2 different options here as well. Now I know they would like VJ Edgecombe, but assuming they can't get him, I don't think they're high on Trey Johnson. And if assuming I'm right there, then that means they got either, Con Knuppel, as I mentioned earlier, or Jeremiah Fears, the point guard from Oklahoma. Again, you can't go wrong with either option here. I feel like since the Jazz have multiple shooting guards on the last day of deals, like Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson, both are probably going to be gone after this year. And then with Keontae George, who they drafted a couple years ago, even though he can have the point guard duties, he's just better as a shooting guard. And so that leaves just Isaiah Collier as a point guard. And he showed some good stuff, this past season during his rookie year, but he's more of like a passing first type of point guard. So I feel like they'll get Jeremiah Fears here to be like the instant go get a bucket point guard and potentially the future of the franchise. Because the thing I like watching about Jeremiah Fears back in college is that I know he hasn't gotten a lot of these comparisons. I've only heard one other person say this comparison, but to me, when I watch him, with the way his ball handles and the touch around the rim and all that, despite his short size, he just reminds me of Kyrie Irving. That's what he reminds me of. But I've heard also some other, comparisons like a Jamal Murray or something like that, So I feel like if you're Utah, I would go that pick if I were them. Number 6, Washington. They could go, again, a couple different options here, but I feel like they're going to go with the prospect that, for weeks and weeks until recently was considered, a top 3 or 4 pick in the draft, and forward from Rutgers, Ace Bailey. Because he hasn't worked out for a lot of teams, but he said that one of the few teams that he wouldn't mind getting drafted to was Washington. And if you're Washington, you're not playing for anything anyways. You can take a developmental type player, a player with some risk, if you will. And so I feel like they'll draft Bailey here to pair up with the rookie they drafted last year with Alex Sarr, to have a good front court there. Okay, number 7, New Orleans. Now, what's interesting about the Pelicans is that they made a trade move recently. And one of the parts of the move was getting rid of the backup veteran center Kelly Olynyk. Now, since Issy Missy, who they drafted in the first round last year, he's a defender type of center, so not really going to give you much offensively. So I think they will now go with a center with some offensive game. So I think they'll draft Derek Queen, the center from Maryland, with this pick. to have a nice 1-2 punch there center. Number 8, Brooklyn. I feel like if Constantinople from Duke, who I mentioned earlier, if he falls to 8th at this point, if you're Brooklyn, screw everything, go get him. Like, he's the next best player at that point. Go grab him. To me, when I watch him, he kind of reminds me a lot of Klay Thompson, just a really good shooter, really good from the free throw line, and could defend. Back when Klay Thompson was in his prime, like I feel like that would be a good get if I was Brooklyn there. 9, Toronto. Toronto has a couple different options here. I heard they wouldn't mind even trading on this pick. They could go back up point guard here. Even though Jamal Shed shows some good things later on last season, he still has a ceiling versus taking a point guard early and having with some high upside to back up him quickly as the point guard. They could go that route, but they also could really use a center. Jacob Pertle's on his last year of his deal, and then Boucher's the backup center as a free agent. They don't have anyone after that, so I feel like they'll get the Duke center, Kawan Maloch, whatever you say his name. Next, 10, Phoenix. Phoenix has a pick after they traded, KD to Houston a couple days ago. So again, there's multiple different options here. If I'm Phoenix, I feel like if Maloch or Queen, if either center falls down to 10, that's who they're going to pick. But if both centers are gone by that pick, then they're going to go a different route. And one of the routes is they can go with a wing defender, or they can go with the point guard, since Tyus Jones, their current starting point guard, is a free agent. And while Booker and Jalen Green, who they just acquired, and Bradley Beal, while they all can handle the ball, it's better if they're just strictly shooting guards and not being point guards. So they could go that route as well. But I feel like they're going to go the wing defender route here, and I feel like they're going to go with the in-state product, and they're going to go with the wing defender with a very high upside in Carter Bryant, the wing from Arizona. Number 11, Portland. I think they were going to take a backup point guard here, but since they just traded for Drew Holiday recently, that takes care of that need. And since the Portland already has front court depth, I feel like the only thing that they could use is wing depth, and not for offensive purposes, but they really could use wing depth for defensive purposes. And at this point, the best defensive wing player in the draft would be Colin Murray-Boyles, the wing from South Carolina. So I feel like they go that route. Chicago is 12th. Now, the Bulls have a lot of different players that are in the last year of their contracts and all that they could be moving. So we don't know what Chicago's going to do. They have multiple different routes they can go. For me, I think they'll move Alonzo Ball eventually, and then I think they'll extend either Josh Giddey or Caleb White, but I don't think that they're going to extend both of them. So assuming one of them eventually leaves, then I feel like they could draft a point guard here to kind of sit back for a year and then take over, after one of them leaves. So I feel like they'll go with another in-state product here, and they'll go Kasparas Jakushinis, the point guard from Illinois. Number 13, Atlanta. The Hawks have clear needs here. One is getting a big man, since Clint Capella is going to leave a free agency, and Larry Nance Jr. is also a free agent. The other need is a point guard to back up Trae Young, since Karis LeVert is more of a shooting guard and a free agent. And Dyson Daniels is a defender, really, not a scorer. So I think that unless a big-time player falls to the spot, then I think they're going to go with a passing first point guard, who I know Quinn Snyder likes to have in the system, and the best passer in the draft is Igor Denman, the point guard from BYU. I feel like that's who will go there. Number 14, San Antonio. The Spurs could probably use a big man to back up Wembanyama, but with Chris Paul most likely leaving free agency, I think they could go a point guard with a high upside here to back up De'Aaron Fox. So I think they go with a point guard for France and Delon Troye. 15, Oklahoma City. I heard recently today that the Thunder are trying to trade up, perhaps, which is crazy because they don't have many holes. They just won a title, I think one thing they could use is another option at the backup power forward spot. So, like, if they don't want to play in Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren at the same time, but they want to have, like, legit power forward next to them. Kenrich Williams, I think his name is. Like, he hasn't proved much this season, especially in the finals. When I watched him play, he didn't do anything. So that spot technically is up for grabs there. I'm assuming they're willing to give up on Williams. So therefore, I think they draft a power forward here with some high risk, high reward, since they can do that at this point since they're so deep. So I have them taking Noah Esingwe from Germany. Uh, 16, Memphis, the pick that they got from trading Desmond Bain to Orlando recently. With Zach Edey going to miss the start of the season, and who knows how long he's going to miss, and with Brandon Clark, the backup center, having a lot of injury history as well, I think the Grizzlies could definitely use a center here. So I think they're going to go with the center that has a similar type of game to Edey, and Thomas Sorber from Georgetown. 17, Memphis. I think if a good point guard falls to the Timberwolves, then that's the route they'll go, since Nickeil Alexander-Walker's a free agent and Mike Conley's on his last legs in the final year of his deal. Um, if there's no good point guard at the spot that they like, then I feel like they'll go with a power forward to kind of back up Julius Randle. I think they go with a Georgia guy since it worked out well the last time they drafted a Georgia guy with Anthony Edwards. So they're going to go Asa Newell from Georgia. 8, Washington. Washington needs a center, in my opinion, to back up Alex Sarr, who they drafted last year. So if the top 3 centers are gone at this point, then they take the next one available on the draft board, which for a lot of people that'd be Joanne Beringer from France. 19, Brooklyn. The Nets really need another big man, so I think they'll go with one that needs some development, but there's definitely some upside in Rasheer Fleming from St. Joseph's. Number 20, Miami. The Heat just need like a dominant offensive player that can just go get a bucket whenever, and I feel like a champion is the type of player that will attract Pat Riley's attention in the draft. So therefore, I think they will go Walter Clayton Jr. from Florida, the man of the year in college basketball, or at least the NCAA tournament wise, as he led Florida to a national championship and is a dominant offensive scorer. 21, Utah. If the Jazz don't take a wing with the 5th pick, then they can go guard instead. But assuming they've taken a guard already, then they got to go wing here. Multiple different wing options they can go with, but I feel like they'll go with one of the best shooters left remaining in the draft in Liam McNeely, the wing from UConn. 22, Atlanta. Now the Hawks need a big man, as I mentioned earlier, but the problem is that this is a high spot to draft remaining centers available. So if I were them, I'd trade back. But again, I don't project trades in my draft, so therefore I have them taking one of the next players available that has some really good defensive upside as well. So I think they're going to go with Cedric Coward from Washington State. 23, New Orleans. With Zion not always being healthy and Herbert Jones coming off a major injury, I think the Pelicans are going to go with a power forward to back both of them up. So I feel they'll go with a guy who's already polished. He could play if injuries become a factor, and Danny Wolf from Michigan. 24, Oklahoma City. Again, the Thunder, I feel like at this point, will just take a guy they can stash in the G League or overseas rubber, so they take a guy from France and Noah Pinda. 25, Orlando. Orlando could really use some more shooting, even though they traded for Bain already. So I could see them taking a shooting guard, but since the Magic just traded a wing defender in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, or KCP, they could use another wing defender, so I had them taking Will Riley from Illinois as the next best wing defender available. 26, Brooklyn. The Nets really want to draft a point guard for the future since D'Angelo Russell's a free agent, so I think they'll take the next best point guard available here with Jace Richardson. 27, Brooklyn. Again, if the Nets keep all their picks, and I think they could just take the next best player available at this point, which in my opinion would be Nikhil Clifford, the shooting guard from Colorado State. 28, Boston. With Al Horford considered retirement, and he's definitely getting up there in age, and Porzingis always having injury concerns, the Celtics could use another center. So I feel they go with a poor man's version of Porzingis, with Ryan Kalkbrenner for Creighton, who's a really good three-point shooter and a good defender, but obviously not what Porzingis is. 29, Phoenix. Again, assuming the Suns don't draft a center at the 10th overall pick, then they'll get one here, in my opinion. And to me, Maxime Reynaud, the center from Stanford, would be the perfect person to get the spot. And then last but not least, with the LA Clippers at the 30th pick. The Clippers could go out of center of the spot if Reynaud or Kalkbrenner is at the spot to have a good backup behind Zubac. Because if they were drafted another center besides that, that'd be drafting way highly, and they can save that for the second round if need be. But if they go with a guard here, then I feel like that's what they should do, especially since Chris Dunn is not, he is what he is at this point in his career. They can use a more dynamic shooting guard. So I feel like they'll go with one that has some development to do basically, but he has a very good high upside, and a lot of people love him in this draft. So I have them taking Drake Powell, the shooting guard from North Carolina University. So those are my predictions for my mock draft, if you will. So we'll see what ends up happening in the draft. Make sure to tune in Wednesday and Thursday night for that. Thank you very much for listening to my podcast. Please subscribe to my channel and tell about me. Thank you very much. You know, have a wonderful day.